This is it, the Lost Lake Trail. My church has an annual hike every winter. This year we're hiking the Lost Lake Trail up to Lost Lake. We climbed it last year and I was excited to climb it again. Last year it took us over 7 grueling hours to reach the emergency shelter at the top. We took several wrong turns and went off track multiple times, causing us to lose hours. On top of that, it was extremely snowy, causing it to generally be slower to ascend. So, without further ado, here's this year's hike. I woke up early, eager to start the hike. We drove for a while, going to the coast where the hike would take place. Right when we got there, I couldn't see much. Everything was enrobed in fog. But immediately, the beauty of the surroundings astounded me. Right by the entrance was an awesome river. Starting the hike, if it's loud, it's because we're right by a road. But man, stunning already. At the start there was a steep section allowing us our first true view, but it soon leveled off to an old road. That's there for the first kilometer or so of the hike. It was quite wet. Everywhere. Moss covered the trees, one of my favorite parts of the Pacific Northwest. Already we were getting some great views. Then at this point, fog arrived and it looked like a horror film. No, seriously, I was looking left, I was looking right, and I was thinking a murderer is gonna come out of nowhere and start biting our ankles or something. My brother wore his shorts, no pants, in winter. Let's zoom this in. In the middle of the Canadian mountains. We're just barely coming out of the fog now. Just barely, there's still a bit left. It was awesome. We stopped for lunch partway up and then we just kept going, trudging ever onward by trees, boulders, streams. Hey, there's some snow!
Yay!
If I'm not mistaken, I'm at the end of the trail right now. Eventually I got to the shelter. It felt a whole lot easier to get to the top this year than last year because there was less snow and we didn't get lost near as many times. It really is a random little cabin in the woods. We're in the cabin here, the little A-frame. Man, feels so good. Let's show you the view. There's not much right now. It's been really foggy all day, but there's a bit of a view. It really is a little random seeming cabin in the woods. It's so random it almost seems pointless. It's so far from civilization, but it can actually save lives, which we'll get to later. I tried to start a fire, alas the supplies were too moist for my mediocre fire making skills. If I had to spend a week up here alone, I might freeze. Eventually though, the rest of the team arrived and some of the more seasoned outdoorsmen were able to start a fire. Oh, how do you feel?
Tired. Je suis très fatigué.
Here you can see David from the last video having steam drifting off of him. This was happening to all of us because boy is the Pacific Northwest wet. So when we got here we got this pot out to fill with water so that we could boil it down at the lake. But look what's inside. 2 dead rats that are currently moldy. So that's something. After that enthralling discovery, I went down to the lake with a different pot and got some water. On the way I snapped some amazing videos because just look at this. Makes me think of the mountains in Middle Earth. Finally, we ate dinner, and then me and my friend David sang some songs around the fire before finally hitting the hay in our sleeping bags after a long day's hike. I woke ready to start the day with vigor. I walked out to the edge of the mountain where I could see down into Howe Sound. Last time we hiked up here, we had virtually no view because the fog was so thick the entire time and it was constantly snowing. But to my absolute glee, this time there was an epic view. It was also more snowy than the day before because it had snowed quite powerfully the night earlier. Now, last year we slept outside in Quincy's, which is why I built one before I left in preparation. But even with the new snow, it wasn't cold enough and there wasn't enough snow to be able to do it, so we all squished together in the shelter. Anyways, that morning we chopped some wood. Another cool thing is that the outhouse up on the mountain has a great view. One guy who had hiked up there a lot of times said that it used to be even better before all the trees grew up. We decided as a group that we should hike up to the peak because where we actually were was a sort of elevated valley that we could climb higher. I'll show you on Google Earth. Anyway, we went up the hike and some great sweeping views were found. We kept on hiking for a few hours, but because we kept falling through the snow, the trail was quite difficult and we weren't at a pace where we would get back before dark. We decided to head back. This was a real sore spot for me because I wanted to tough it and continue the whole way, but alas, we're in a democracy, so we headed back to camp. This is the closest we're gonna get to any real view. Back at camp, I wandered around the forest, looking at the plants and feeling all the great vibes in a mountain forest. I also took more videos of the view on the western side because I cannot get enough of it. Seriously, look, it's my wallpaper. At the end of the day, we cooked some sausages over the crackling fire and then put them in a soupy massive curry noodles. It was good despite it being improvised. Let's pretend this is it since I didn't take the video. After that delicious meal, as the sun of day 2 was starting to set, we cracked open the cabin logbook, which had been running for at least 30 years now. I'll tell you 2 stories. The first is of a man who was doing a different hike miles away from this one, but he got severely lost and wandered upon the cabin by happenstance. He said that this is the only thing that kept him alive while all of his clothes were soaked and frozen due to the cold and wet. The other logbook entry was one of a man who decided to go up to Deeks Peak, but the snow that year was extremely icy and he slipped on the side of the mountainous cliff that was over 1,000 meters in the air. His friend who saw him fall but couldn't help him went down the mountain to get aid. The man on the mountain waited for hours, watching the cars go by on the road below and thinking, they're driving down there, living their lives when I'm up here. Any moment I could slip and die. I might never get help. I might never be found. However, eventually a rescue team came up and picked him up in a helicopter, saving him. He had no injuries, just a terrifying but great story to tell. The morning of the descent was the first day where no clouds masked the view, which was awesome, though clouds in my opinion can offer depth and a magical feel. We had a little Sunday morning church service at the top and then headed down back to civilization using ropes for some parts. Just like last time I did the hike, I feel like it was much more fun on the way down. Gravity was helping us big time. Also, the places that were previously foggy were now all nice and clear, which was great. There were so many little waterfalls and streams crossing our path that I couldn't film them all. We had a quick lunch and then continued down. There was an old logging bridge over the awesome river we passed that had massive holes in it. Seriously, if I slipped into that would be the end of Jacob. But it was really cool. We are finally at the parking lot. After probably like 2.5, 3 hours of hiking, we're here. Of course, a beautiful view of the mountains. Absolutely stunning as per usual. And then we drove home. Okay, one big takeaway from this hike is human vulnerability. Whenever you're out in nature for extended periods of time in the cold, in the wild, you're always naturally more vulnerable. This is great for my humility and reminds me how easily I can die. Humans might have the brains over nature, but one human cannot withstand nature for long. This is a great hike that I recommend to anyone who would respect and enjoy the trail. Thank you for watching this video.